Uh, we'll get started. Welcome to the November 18, 2020 regular meeting of the Lake Bluff Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. If we could have a call to order and roll call, please, Mr. Cole.
Certainly. Member Burns.
Here.
Member Danley. Member Danley, I believe you are muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. Here. I'm here.
Okay.
Member Miller.
Here.
Member Ryder.
Here.
Member Russell.
Here.
And Chair Peters.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get started with agenda item number 2, let's hear directly from Mr. Jim Murray, if we could.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as some of you know, over the course of the last 9 months, I have relocated from a domicile point of view to Washington State. Kate and I are still living in Lake Bluff, but from a legal perspective, I no longer reside there. And as such, in working with Ben and Drew, we've determined that I'm no longer eligible to be a member of the PCZBA. And so with regret, I had to submit my resignation this afternoon, but was pleased to be given the opportunity just to speak tonight and just thank each and every one of you for serving alongside of you for the last 2 years. It's been an honor to be part of this body and have really enjoyed and appreciated all the energy and the insights and the enthusiasm for Lake Bluff that everybody brings to the table. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry to leave under these circumstances, but look forward to seeing all of you around the village in the near future.
Good luck, and sorry to see you go. Bye.
All right.
Yeah.
Enjoy Washington, but yeah, look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, no, I'll be back in 2 days. So it's a legal issue, but anyhow, it's great to see you all, and wish you all the best.
No, thanks so much, Jim, for your tremendous contributions. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the board for the past couple of years, and you've been an exemplary member. So it's going to be it's a huge loss from our perspective.
Well, thank you for that, and I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Jim, too.
You also, Jim. Okay.
Bummer.
Yeah, tremendous loss, but I'm very happy for Jim and his wife and his family. But it creates a definite significant void on our committee, so to speak.
And I'm very sorry to do this, but I was just switching from my unreliable internet to a more reliable internet. Did he say that they were moving? I missed that.
I think.
No, they're not. Okay. Not moving. Okay, thanks. I'll catch up later.
I think it's more of a technical domicile change, Susan, and I think.
Oh, I see.
Unfortunately, the domicile is not Lake Bluff any longer.
That's correct.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so from a legal perspective, you can have homes in different locations, and it's about where you reside. And
Yeah.
Based on intent, and residence is also based, and they look at several factors to determine residency. And so after consultation, it was determined that as of now, he does not technically reside in the village from a perspective of being able to serve on a body within the village government. So.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item number 2, non-agenda items and visitors, public comment time. Mr. Cole, is there anybody out there waiting to speak to the committee?
We do have an audience tonight, but no one, at least yet, has indicated they'd like to speak to us. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to make a comment, if you're on the phone, you can dial *9, again, star and the number 9. And if we're still seeing no one, Mr. Chairman, so I think we are good to proceed.
All right, let's proceed to agenda item number 3, consideration of the October 21, 2020 PCZBA regular meeting minutes. Any proposed revisions?
Just one. Go ahead, George. Just one note, Member Murray did join the meeting immediately after the roll call was taken. So I think normally you note that when someone arrives late.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Member Russell. Any other proposed changes?
Yeah, so, sorry, on page 2, fifth paragraph, Member Burns said that since subterranean garages will be impacted by bulk, I think it should be will impact bulk instead of will be impacted by bulk. And then on page 4, the paragraph right in the middle, I don't know, I mean, I didn't go through the video, but I don't know what that first sentence was about. I don't particularly remember saying it, so I think you could probably strike after said, and just go right to the next sentence and say, Member Burns said he does not think subterranean garages require a special use permit. I don't remember saying that the PCZBA wants to develop regulations and special conditions. I don't think we necessarily want, you know, to do that kind of stuff. So again, I didn't go back and look at the video, but I don't recall the importance of that. That was it.
Thank you, Member Burns. Any other comments? Hearing none, is there a motion, please?
Motion to accept the minutes as stated with the adjustments.
Thank you, Member Miller. Vote, please.
Certainly, Member Burns,
Aye.
Member Danley,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Ryder,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
and Chair Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Agenda item number 4, public hearing, 926 North Shore Drive, special use permit for dog training business. Mr. Cole, if you could give the panel an overview, please.
Certainly. So this is a very straightforward one to pause up. Currently operates within the village at another property at 926 North Shore Drive. Yes, 968 North Shore Drive now. They are moving to 926 North Shore Drive down the street. That move, again, special use permits in the village are non-transferable. They can't be moved on their own, so this body would need to recommend, the village board would need to approve a new special use permit for them to operate. No complaints about the current operation. From a staff perspective, we would recommend that consistent with your past special use permits for this type of business, that there would be a condition of approval would be that there be no outdoor activities, kennels, runs, etc. I would also mention that historically at building permit time, we do ask that they provide a plan to as to how they would evacuate the animals in the event of a fire. That hasn't been a condition of special use permits in the past, but we would request it here also. Happy to answer any questions, or we can invite the applicant to present.
Yeah, we'll have to swear in the applicant. And,
Yes, sir.
is the applicant or petitioner available?
Yes, we are.
And if you could raise your right hand and state, do you agree to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. If you could state your name for the record and your address, please.
Sure, it's Brenda Belmonte, and it's 815 Jenkinson Avenue in Lake Bluff, Illinois, 60044.
Okay. If you could, Ms. Belmonte, please just give us a brief overview of the relief that you're seeking. As a matter of course, I think your submission with respect to the standards for special use permit will be adopted into the record, so I don't think we have to go step by step through that. But if you wanted to give us a brief overview, that would be great.
Sure. We came before the Planning and Zoning Commission roughly at this time last year to request a special use permit for 968 North Shore Drive, and it's been a wonderful fit. In Lake Bluff, certainly our roots are with Lake Bluff, and we've had more requests for services than we anticipated in a year. So at this time, my partner Stephanie Challand and I are looking at purchasing the building at 926 North Shore Drive and making Two Paws Up Dog Training's home in Lake Bluff. And we would be bringing the businesses currently located in Green Oaks also into this facility. So rather than have two separate spaces, we're looking to combine it all into one with a permanent home in Lake Bluff.
Excellent. And congratulations on the prospective real estate deal.
Thank you.
Commissioners, who would like to start?
I just had a question.
Sure.
It's Jill here. I can't even see myself here, but anyway, I'm here. Two Paws Up, what makes this a better location for you? And do you have any interest in expanding beyond this footprint, or will this be sufficient enough?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We don't feel that we need to expand beyond that footprint, at least not in the near future. We have no desire to expand our services into either the daycare side or the boarding side or grooming. It is simply dog training, and this building allows us to have roughly double the space that we currently have now for our classes, and more than double the space, actually about triple the space that we currently have working out of the veterinary clinic down the street. So our business model is that this particular location should be big enough for us to meet the demand that we have now and continue to grow in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Danley. Mr. Burns.
No particular questions. I think, given the fact that you already reside in the area, and I guess I'm just happy that the business is successful. I mean, we really want to encourage and support successful businesses. So and I think it's not a high impact to the village. So I'm very supportive of it. No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Miller.
I too have no particular concerns about your project, Brenda. I do have a question though. What is Puppy Head Start?
So Puppy Head Start is a service we currently offer in our location on Nagel Court. What we do is we offer a drop-off service for puppies, much like what we are doing for the adult dogs in the 968 North Shore location. So those puppies are there for a short period of time during the day. We work on house training, crate training, the socialization aspect, which is critical for puppies at that early age. We're working on many of the challenging situations puppy owners find difficult to deal with.
How long does it take you to train a dog to go outdoors?
It's really an owner-dependent behavior, so we can kind of jumpstart them with getting them on a schedule, and then it's really up to the owners to maintain that particular schedule, at home. We also work with signaling behavior, so how does the puppy tell you that they have to go to the bathroom? And so our observation skills are clearly much better than most owners.
Very good. Well, good luck with your move. Sorry we had to make you go through all this again.
It's okay. we're happy we found the place in Lake Bluff, so it's where we wanted to be.
Good, good. Good luck.
Ms. Ryder?
I'm a very satisfied customer, two paws up. My dog is 14 now, and he still won't listen to me, but
I'm not going to support you said that.
Yeah. You did promise me he would calm down, and I will tell you, he has calmed down finally. It did take him 10 or so years, but yeah. Thank you, Brenda. Glad to have you remain in Lake Bluff. Thank you so much.
All right. Mr. Russell?
I have no questions.
With respect to volume of patients or customers, Ms. Belmonte, approximately how many individuals, how many cars per day?
So we're going to have two variations that will be using the parking lot. The Puppy Head Start clients and our day training clients. That's the day training is what we're currently offering at 968 North Shore Drive. Those clients will be drop off and pick up only. So it will be very consistent with something like a yuppie puppy daycare type parking situation where they'll be there dropping off the dog in the car and go. The back part of the parking lot, which we have 18 spaces, I believe, that will be for our classes and for our employees. And our class sizes have always been small, and due to COVID now they're even smaller. So we typically have 45-minute to 1 hour classes with 4 to 5 students at a time. Then there's about a half hour to an hour break so that we can do the cleaning in between those classes. So it's typically a very rotational parking. We don't typically have 20 or 30 clients all in the parking lot at the same time. It's 6 coming in, 6 going out for the classes.
All right, thank you. I think in the documents that were circulated to us, there was one proposed condition that may be recommended, and that relates to no outdoor activities. Are you familiar with that condition, and are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, we have no desire to have any outdoor kennels or anything that would impact that. Our outdoor activities are simply getting the dogs outside to go to the bathroom quickly and then back in again. We may do some loose leash walking, in our parking lots, but there will be no activities that will impact the surrounding businesses or the area.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
Are you suggesting that they should do something similar?
I believe that was an unintentional transmission, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
in the parlance.
Any further comments from the petitioner?
No, we're just happy to be in Lake Bluff.
All right. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just
Press
note,
close.
yes, I would just note for the record, we have no one wishing to speak. Again, those people can make themselves known, or we could continue.
Okay. Yeah, is there anyone in the audience, so to speak, that wishes to address this particular petition? Hearing none? Is there a motion, please? And we're a recommending body in this instance.
Motion to recommend approval?
Second.
And that's approval with that limited condition, Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Okay,
And I second that motion.
thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could we have a vote, please?
Certainly, Member Ryder,
Aye.
Member Burns,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Danley,
Aye.
Chair Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good luck.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. All right. Agenda item number 5, a workshop with respect to 500 Arden Shore Drive, or Arden Shore Road, I should say. If you
Yes.
could give us an overview, Mr. Cole.
Certainly, and I know, I believe probably everyone in our audience is here to speak on this issue tonight, or to listen and probably to comment during public comment. So this, as you'll recall, a very, very, very long time ago in, I believe, February, right before the beginning of our long COVID year, we heard a workshop on this item or on this property, excuse me, for a proposed 12-unit development. Again, that development clustered towards the lake shore, and that would have kept most of the western part of the property, which consists of wetlands and some large specimen trees, et cetera, as open space. Specifically, it would have been used as a driving and practice range for Shore Acres Golf Course, which lies just to the north of this property.
We have a lot of support, probably. Do we make a proposal?
So what you have here in front of you, that proposal, as you can understand, did not ultimately move forward. A new potential purchaser, Liam, has come forward, Mr. Kriebel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And so has proposed to create 2 lots, again, the western 18 acres or so being used as a practice facility for the golf course, and then the eastern about just under 8 acres being used as a single-family residence in an estate. We've given you an overview in the memorandum as far as the relevant policies from the comprehensive plan, how this, the density of this proposed development would line up with the form of development contemplated in the comprehensive plan, and also talking about the variations procedurally that would be needed if this proposal were to move forward to subdivision and to construction. What I would say is this does, just by timing, dovetail into this group's discussion of accessory dwelling units. This proposal contemplates, a single family estate, and then it contemplates 2, they're described as cottages, but essentially full accessory dwelling units, bedrooms, bathrooms, etc., also located on the same site. This workshop is really about 500 Arden Shore. Certainly, we would be interested in the group's guidance, the commission's guidance as to if this moves forward, procedurally how you'd like to handle that. Certainly, depending on the timing, our ADU rules may be in place by the time this came forward. There may be some combination of more single-purpose relief that would allow this to move forward, whether it's variations, special use permits, et cetera. Again, really, what we're looking for as staff is just if there's support for the development proposal, we certainly can bring you options on how to best approve that. One note I will point out here, though, again, while it's mostly about 500 Arden Shore, this does illustrate one of the points we talked about in that ADU conversation was the idea of, would you want to allow more than one ADU on an estate lot? At the time, in the abstract, the thought was that was undesirable, at least at first. But I would note that this is a proposal that contemplates that. And certainly we can discuss that more after the applicant's presentation and after we go through their materials. So happy to answer any preliminary questions, or we can turn it over.
Oh, I think we're ready to proceed.
All right.
If you could state your name and
Glenn?
address for the record, please.
We can hear you.
This is Mike Edelman. You hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm Mike Edelman. I'm here on behalf of William Crable, better known as Lean. I've never called him William. I've lived in Lake Forest the past 35 years and have been a real estate attorney practicing in the community for most of that time. I've developed a couple of residential subdivisions in Lake Forest on my own account, as well as on behalf of several clients. I've never had the occasion or privilege to work with the village of Lake Bluff, so this is a first time for me. I've previously served 5 years on both the Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals in Lake Forest, and then 6 years as an alderman on City Council. So I want to thank all of you for the volunteerism that you do for Lake Bluff, because I know the hours that it takes and the passion you have to have for it for the benefit of the community giving back. As I said, I'm here on behalf of Leam. Leam's under contract to purchase the 26 acres at 500 Arden Shore Road. I understand that this body is well familiar with it. You've seen several different petitions. Hopefully this is the last petition that'll ever have to come before you. We think it's the best one. Our involvement began actually at the beginning of the summer, and I reached out to Glenn to talk about ADUs, and he mentioned that you were having a workshop on it in either June or July. So a bunch of us attended that. We monitored it, found it very interesting. We thought we were going to have a contract on it early summer, and it didn't turn out to come to fruition. Another party had it under contract for 60 days, and that fell through. And as soon as it fell through, Leam pounced on the opportunity to put it under contract once again. And we have a pretty short time frame within which to develop a comfort level. Normally, for myself or a client, I'd want a contract with a time frame that allowed me to satisfy my contingencies, get my subdivision approved, complete my due diligence. We don't have that luxury in this instance because we could not negotiate that with the seller. So that's why we asked Glenn and Drew if we could have this workshop with you, not for any formal action to be taken, but just to get some feedback and direction from all of you as to what you would be amenable to considering, and maybe you can give us some guidelines for the completion of our due diligence. Basically, we want to do a 2-lot subdivision. About 7.7 of the easterly acreage, 7.7 acres of the easterly half of the property would be reserved for one residential lot for Leam to construct a relatively modest residence, a primary residence, and he'd like a couple of ADUs for family. And the other 18.3 acres would be set aside and sold to Shore Acres, so they could do a driving range for their membership. We've been scrambling because we basically have a 45-day window before we have to fish or cut bait on the contract. We've engaged a firm of Mastardi Platt who are doing a phase 1 environmental for us. I was out there with Carl DiTomaso a couple Saturdays ago excavating spoils piles that you might be aware of that are on site to see what might be beneath the topsoil that was covering the surface. And we're just really trying to move this along as quickly as possible so that Leam can make a decision. We need to discuss ADUs, we need to discuss well and septic with you, easement access, setbacks. Having said all that, Leam would like to state what his vision for the property is. Then I'm going to sit back and just listen diligently while Nick Patera from Pesca Associates gets into some of the detail with you. So Leam, unmute your mic and take it away.
Buddy, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
So, Mike, thanks for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for making time for this. As Mike said, I'm Liam Crabiel. Have a wife named Karen. We have 2 kids, and we live in Chicago, in Lincoln Park. And we've been thinking for a while now that we would love to find a place in or around the Lake Bluff community where we could build a residence that could be a place where we could spend time when we're not in the city, such as the weekends, the summer, and holidays and that type of thing. I think I have relatives who have been in Lake Forest for many years, so I'm somewhat familiar with Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, and have been drawn to the area for a long time. I think my wife and I really liked about this property on Arden Shore is that it's a beautiful part of your village, and it's part of the country estate district, I think, as you call it. And what we like about that is the kind of wonderful history of some of the farms. Obviously, Crabtree Farm being the most famous example, but just kind of the kind of country farm aesthetic of the country state district. And I think, for example, I'd reference Crabtree Farm in general, but the William McCormick Blair residence in particular at 982 Sheridan Road, that was designed by David Adler, as being, I would say, our kind of inspiration for the property that we're looking at 500 Arden Shore Road. And I guess what I mean by that is similar to the William McCormick Blair property, is that this is a larger piece of property. This one, even after the subdivision, the eastern parcel that we would hope to keep would be about 7.6 acres of property. So a substantial piece of property and about 400 feet of lake frontage. And on a property that size, my understanding from Mike and Nick is that, we could build, if we want to, a very substantial house. But actually, kind of sticking with that kind of original spirit of the country estate district, what honestly we would much prefer to do aesthetically is, instead of having kind of one big house, have more of that kind of country estate, kind of country aesthetic feel to it, where we'd have a much smaller kind of main house, and then have a couple of small guest cottages, because my wife and I both still have parents who are with us and other relatives, and we think it would just work really well to have a couple of guest cottages where family and guests can stay, but also at the same time afford them their own bit of privacy. And just to be clear, we have no interest in any sort of rental situation with the guest cottages or anything like that. This is just purely for our own personal use. And I guess the other thing I would say is, my understanding is that the village is at least contemplating allowing ADUs in your village. And I was led to believe that that it might be one option is to think of this as a bit of a one size fits all, where you say, look, you can have up to one ADU regardless of the size of the property. And I guess I would just ask this group to think about, for a property of this size where it's over 7.6 acres of land, could there be an accommodation for a second guest cottage, given the size of the property overall, is really what we're thinking about, and that the overall footprint of the structures on the property would be quite small and significantly below the overall kind of allowance for a property on a piece of land of that size. But again, I appreciate your time and your consideration, and again, we would really love to have a home in Lake Bluff for us and our family to use, and hopefully something that really, again, ties into the original kind of aesthetic of the country estate district. So with that, I'll stop talking and I'll turn it over to Nick.
But before Nick chimes in, let me just add, I believe Jack Keller, president of the board of directors of Shore Acres, is standing by, just in case there are any questions that the commissioners may have of him. Is Phil Liederbach standing by, your architect? Do you know, Liam or Nick? Do you know if Phil's is on?
No, I don't know.
I don't know if Phil's on, but I think Jack is dialed in.
Okay, and Hal Frank, the attorney for Shore Acres, is also dialed in. Okay, with that, Nick, it's all yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Nick Patera is my name, and the opportunity has come forward. We've looked at this property, and I just added up the years when the buildings were there 25 years ago, when it was the school, as a prospective development. And through time and coincidence, we've stayed with this property looking at different various plans, and once in a while, lightning does strike. And I think that the opportunity that came up with this to have the collaboration of Shore Acres and Liam and his family come forward with a vision of what could happen on this property is extraordinary. And what we want to do is, I'll take you a little bit of a tour in a minute if Glenn could help me with this, but the idea of having a piece of property that's not comparable to other properties that have consideration for ADU. Some of the more high-density properties that are in town don't have a lake in the backyard. They don't have a golf course in the front yard. And we would have a hard time trying to find another 26-acre piece of property from the Indiana line all the way up to Wisconsin line that has this kind of character as a residential single home property with two ADUs. So I think that there's precedent here that we can solicit your thoughts on that distinguish this from other properties, that's not going to set up a standard that has other people come knocking on the door in Lake Bluff and saying, hey, you gave it to them, how come not us? So that's my at least my beginning of thinking about how can we situate something that has the historic precedent that's equivalent to some of the most grand properties that we see up and down the North Shore, specifically Crabtree and some of the other grand estates that we have in Lake Forest. The preservation of open space, the country estate, and the sense of legacy, I think, that exists with this opportunity is something that we're hoping we can come to some commonality with. I can kind of take you through this real briefly, if you don't mind. Glenn, is there a way you can bring up the site plan that we put together?
Most certainly.
Thank you. Some of you may be familiar with this. You can stop and ask if you're not. But basically, the red line that goes around the property does not touch Shore Acres Road. That is the 26-acre piece of property, including a stem that contains the Shore Acres Road. The Arden Shore Road that's there today. That's a remnant of the school in its past. So that stem would continue, and it serves the Booth home in its current condition. The other access point would come in now again through the great cooperation of Shore Acres. We're intending to connect up at the Shore Acres Drive at its elbow, at that eastern north-south elbow where it changes from east-west, and there would be two connections. One would feed the golf cart route to the practice range for the golf course. The other would feed the Crable residence as a single driveway, curving around and coming through the woods. Both of these drives would be going across Shore Acres property, owned property, before they are able to attach to the Crable property or the Arden Shores property. The division line that you see between west, the 18 acres, and east, the 7.6 acres, occurs just behind the golf tee. The operation of the golf practice facility between the two parties has been agreed on that it would only fire in a westerly direction. The tee would have its back toward the residential property, and likely a berm or some other screening to to give both parties a sense of privacy and ownership. There's a pretty significant wetland on the 18-acre portion. That's that diagonal stripe that you're seeing. We're doing everything to stay out of the wetland and to preserve the woods in the wetland as an intact natural area as it shows. The two roads that come in, the cart path and the driveway, would have to cross at the narrows of the wetland. As you go into the eastern residential part of the property, the road curves and comes through the woods. It has an opening and vista to the house. This is classic land planning that you would see with some of these grand estates. Is a vista of the home, and then it tucks around and goes through some of the existing trees and vegetation and emerges to arrive at the auto court. The primary home and the main cottage is right in the center. It's set back about 40 feet from the top of the bluff, that red dashed line. Glenn, is there a way to, there are two other little enlargements that we could show. Thank you. A little bit easier. And these are just templates. We really don't have the architecture designed yet, but we're trying to give you an idea of what the scale of a main cottage home would be. As a primary home, a two-story house with a detached garage is what's shown. The south structure is kind of tucked away toward the woods, but getting a view of the lake still and up above the bluff. And then the north structure is set up against a wooded edge and behind the bluff. The bluff has kind of a great point of view from that north smaller cottage. That would be, the north cottage would be a one-bedroom, the south cottage would be a two-bedroom. That's the limit of the structures. The idea of creating a grand open space that's called Great Meadow on this plan, again, is part of the drama that we see. The bluff itself has been stabilized and pulled back. That's why you're seeing it kind of curve back. And the present owner spent a considerable time and money and engineering to make sure that the bluff is not a deterrent, but actually quite a handsome finished kind of natural grade that goes down to the lake. That zigzag going down the bluff is actually a graded pathway that allows you to walk gently without having to have stairs or other inclinator type devices to go down. So as an overview, I can also bring up the comment that Mike brought up, which is having to do with setbacks. We've shown the yellow dashed line as being the building setbacks that we propose, and it's similar to what the Kellers to the south would have, or the Covingtons to the north, Covingtons, with a 40-foot side yard setback on the north and the south, a 100-foot setback from the Lake Michigan east edge, and then on the west edge, we've shown the same as a side yard. We really don't have a front yard because we don't have a frontage on a road at this location, except for up at the north panhandle end where I've shown a 100-foot front yard setback that we wouldn't build in anyway because that's approaching the wetland in that area. So just in summary, the two accessory dwelling units, north cottage, south cottage, the primary home, the setbacks are all elements that we would like to get some opinions on. And I think that we're back to Mike if you have something further to say, or I can answer questions on some of the site plans.
Oh, that was great. That was great. Nick, do you want to, there's a third slide. Do you want to talk at all about the proposed driving range or?
Sure. Thank you. We can look at that in a little closer detail. This is 300 yards of driving range that, like I said, has a from east to west aspect. The bright green kind of L-shaped is the T on the right-hand side of this. That's the east side. The red jaggy line that's going through here and the blue lines, those are the wetlands. And so that you can see that we've been able to accommodate this. And that, frankly, is the reason how we've gotten to balance both parcels so that they're complementary to each other. The golf cart path, you can see a little bit more clearly. One of the comments that came from earlier was making sure we separated those connections at Shore Acres so we don't have a conflict between Liam and his family and golf access for people traversing back and forth to the range from the club. It's about 150-foot separation there. Going across that section, the strip section between Shore Acres Road. Lastly, at the Booth residence, the lower left corner of this, there's a garage that Mr. and Mrs. Booth built that connects to Arden Shore that we would still provide access on Arden Shore Road, and Arden Shore Road could be used still for just incidental golf practice range maintenance if they needed to get a maintenance vehicle back and not use the cart path, but otherwise it would only just be for occasional use. And you know, partly what's not here is any wetland disturbance. The trees that we're showing, some of which are existing trees, would now further be evaluated. There's a lot of, we have a tree inventory and tree survey that was done. It's going to be updated to determine the health condition and whether or not there's still some ash trees that are in here and other species that are left over from the school in its past. That's a pretty good overview of the range. Sorry, there's one other thing. At the end of the golf cart path, there may be a structure for maintenance equipment. If they have ball or equipment storage, it would be the equivalent of a garage, not an occupied structure, other than just for materials maintenance and perhaps shelter if it's an inclement day, rain or such. There could be a way to get in and out of the weather, but otherwise it's not intended to be a plumbed or heated type of a facility. Mike, thank you. That was a good call, and I would be happy to go further if there's questions.
Let me also add to that there's an existing structure left from the Arden Shore School days, the pump house, the old pump house. It's deactivated, and it's uncertain whether it could possibly be reactivated and used for irrigation for the driving range. I'm not expert enough to know if the driving range needs irrigation or not, or maybe even to reactivate the existing hydrants that are on the property too. So that's another structure that we're uncertain whether it's going to remain or be removed.
It's almost come down by itself, so it's not too far from being gone.
True. I know that our team has reached out to George Covington to the north and the Keller family to the south. I've known George Covington for 25 years. George might even be on the Zoom monitoring it. I think both of those meetings went pretty well. Liam, you were there, right? Do you care to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, and Jack Keller also, actually Jack Keller, who I think is listening in, organized that meeting. It was Jack, the Covingtons, myself in person, and then I believe Tim Keller was on the phone. So Jack, I don't want to speak for them, but Jack was there as well, and I think it sounds like they were very supportive of what we would like to do, and I think compared to some of the other, especially compared to some of the other development ideas in the past that have been put up for or considered for 500 Arden Shore, they seem to be very supportive of what we were trying to do, as is Shore Acres. But again, I'll let Jack speak for the club.
one other point. Nick, you didn't touch on what we believe will be the approximate square footages of the house and the ADUs, and I know you don't want to be specifically tie yourself into a number, but I know what Liam has in mind is about a fraction of what the floor area ratio statute would provide for it. I think this land could support about 36,000 square feet of buildable floor area. And the house is what, 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, Nick?
We don't really have a specific, this is shown right now as a template, it's a placeholder. And to be honest, the talent of the architect is going to need to come forward, and so I'm not trying to dodge the question, but the scale of what you're looking at right now might fluctuate, but right now the main cottage is about 3,500. The north cottage is somewhere in 800 square feet. The south cottage is just shy of 1,000 square feet, somewhere in that range. The north and south cottages are single stories. The main cottage primary residence would be a 2-story, and there would likely be a garage associated with that. Those are good placeholders, but I don't want to kind of etch that too firmly because the architect really needs to come forward with his vision on behalf of the family.
And I understand. I just wanted to underscore that our floor area utilization is probably going to be in the range of 10 to 15% of that permitted by code. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
Yep, that is true.
So the most important thing to me from a legal standpoint is the issue of ADUs. We understand the village is getting very close to legislating ADUs. And if we didn't have any, I think we would be totally conforming to the code, and this would be, I hate to use the term, a slam dunk 2-lot subdivision. But the ADUs are an exception to what's currently permissible. And that's where we really wanted to try and draw some feedback from you, the commissioners here, because that's important to Liam. You know, he and Karen, they've got parents that are not getting any younger, and I don't know if they have caregivers yet, but that's in the foreseeable future. He doesn't plan to ever rent this out or use it as a B&B. It's strictly for his own personal consumption, but it would be important to him to be able to have family come and visit and not have to reside in the primary residence, but stay in the ADU and possibly a caregiver in the smaller one.
Mike, can I add to that?
Sure.
We contemplate just different scenarios to say, how could we work out something that would be supportable by the village. We wanted to be pretty straightforward with this. This is one ownership, and for the 7.5 acre, 6 acre residential piece, we didn't want to start to slice it up and say, oh, okay, this will be one ownership, but it will be on 2 lots. It just didn't seem to be the thing that we wanted to do, to start coming up with more PIN numbers just to get through an ordinance issue. And really we're trying to be very straightforward with this and say it's simply what it is a country estate that has supporting buildings in a primary structure that are compatible with each other and not convoluted kind of gymnastics going on with slicing and dicing into multiple parcels on this property.
Right. And Ben Schuster, I don't know if anyone's brought this up to you, but it was suggested to us in some prior conversations that possibly we could do this with a text amendment to the code.
So the text amendment would be one manner in which this could be done. I would have to look at the plan development provisions for a planned residential development, and maybe some modifications that can be done that way. I think for the purposes tonight for the commission, I think the question is it something that you would look at is beneficial and and something that you would want the village to pursue, and if so, we can talk about, from a policy perspective, different ways to accomplish the goal.
Well, we would just want to pursue the course of least resistance, obviously. So that's, I turn it back to you for guidance along that issue.
I have one more just addition. At the beginning of my presentation, the text amendment seemed to be appealing to us because we were able to distinguish this property as unique, the opportunity to combine two compatible users, preserve open space with Shore Acres and their golf practice facility. Again, says that there aren't too many properties that are going to have these circumstances that could then not set a precedent and open up a Pandora's box with other possible users that might have a 26-acre site with a lake in the backyard and a golf course in the front yard. So I think that there are ways that we could do a text amendment with certain conditions.
Do we have anything else to add? Do we need Frank on here? Or Jack Keller on here?
Yeah, so Mr. Keller, I think, looks like he's wanting to speak to the group, as is Mr. Covington, if you'd like us to start going through the public comment piece of this.
Certainly.
All right. We will, takes a second for people to rejoin so that they can speak. Mr. Keller, you're on with us whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Sorry, getting my Zoom going here. Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for your time. My name is Jack Keller. I'm the president of Shore Acres. I live in Winnetka. Just as a point of clarification, I am no relation to the Keller who is the neighbor to the south of 500 Arden Shore Road. Just wanted to make sure there was no confusion there. Thanks for your time. I know the club has been involved with a number of conversations about this property over the years, and I appreciate the village's and the board members' input that have helped us try to figure out a good solution for this property. I think that, as you know, we've come up to you before with some other potential partners, and I think they've had some very thoughtful, attractive, frankly, plans that could have been great. But this solution is clearly the best one that we've had the opportunity to discuss. And we hope that the village will give it careful consideration. Just a couple of comments about it. First of all, I think our goal for our portion of the property is to move our practice facility over to the area that Nick Patera pointed out, and I think that would be nice. But one of the most important parts of the plan is that we maintain the large natural area, which frankly is sort of the majority of the property that I'm not sure whether it's technically the majority, but a large portion of the property that we would end up purchasing from the Craybills after they close with the seller. And the club is very interested in maintaining a natural and attractive entrance to the club, and we are aware of the high quality wetland that's there. We want to preserve it, and in fact, I think I can say that we're in a good position to not only preserve it, but perhaps to improve it by removing some of the invasive species and dead trees and things like that to the extent we're allowed to, because we have a full-time staff that does that type of work all the time. So I think we're in a unique position to do that. But we really do want to maintain a natural setting, and when we do come to the point where we would be constructing the range, we're well aware that there are well-established rules around trees, around what we can do with the trees. And as Nick mentioned, we're carefully undergoing a updating of the tree survey that's there. We have members that are well-versed in the rules, and we'll give careful consideration to what we need to do to make sure that we don't do anything to violate any of the rules, including the tree rules and the wetland rules, et cetera. I think that from the standpoint of the Craybills' vision for their property, the Craybills are a family that is well known to the club, well known to me personally, and I know them to be of extremely high integrity, and also I think they do understand the general aesthetics of Lake Bluff and sort of what you would be looking for. And I think that they're what they would plan to do would be very, very well done and very attractive. And I can say that would be somebody who we would be able to work with very well. We're going to need to give an easement across some of our property for them to access their property, and we will gladly do that and work with them to make sure that we have adequate screening between our property and theirs, et cetera, et cetera. And I would also like to say, lastly, is that we see absolutely no issue, if you're interested in our opinion, we see no issue with them having an additional cottage and or two cottages that are smaller structures. I think they're, when you stand out on that property, you can really get a sense for how large it truly is. And when given the size of home they're discussing, I think, speaking as a neighbor, it will be of no consequence to us. There's plenty of room for us to not be bumping into each other out there. I guess the last thing I would say is when we do one thing I would point out is on the long-term perspective, there was once a school there, and there still is quite a bit of asphalt. No offense to the seller, there's quite a bit of asphalt out there that we would remove and of course turn into green space, grass or grasses or shrubbery or whatever. And so in a way, I think we like to think that that's preserving green space for the area, and we're proud to do that. So I hope that helps. If anyone has any questions for me, please fire away. And I would also be interested in any concerns anybody might have or feedback anybody might have about putting a range. And I know we've discussed it many times in different formats, I guess I'd say. But we're definitely open to any discussion anybody might want to have with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I suppose next we can take, and this is the only person whose name I don't know. If your phone number ends in 0439, you'll be able to talk to us here. I would mention, not sure why, but it looks like you are muted on Zoom, and so you'll have to dial *6 before we can hear you. Again, that's *6.
Hi, this is Tim Keller, the neighbor to the south.
We can hear you, Tim.
Okay. This proposal is obviously much more favorable to George and I, and we've talked many times as these other proposals have come up. One being a couple of months ago, maybe 6 months ago, where it was 12 units clustered very, very close to George and I. And this proposal and this use of the property is obviously much more favorable to the country estate, to the kind of the sense of what's going on in the country estate zoning up there, with the 200,000 square foot minimum, basically 5-acre lots. So what the Crable family is doing here is, is consistent with my lot, with George's lot, and with what's going on up there. So when we talked, it was a week or two ago, with everybody that was on the Bluff, and unfortunately I was out of town and I am out of town now. I guess my concern would be the setbacks, right, of the south cottage. I've been at my residence now for almost 22 years, so we've really enjoyed a lot of privacy back there, seeing as we've had 26 acres vacant for the entire time we've been there. So my family and I have gotten to go out to our pool and do all the things we do and not have a whole lot of noise or anybody around. So we're really used to that. The south cottage, I would be very interested in the setback from the lot line as well as the setback from the bluff for my view to the, what would it be, to the north, right? I mean, I can see from my pool, I can see all the way, and then from my back patio, I can see all the way up to the naval base and the little their entrance there. So this is a very favorable outcome for me. So I'm interested in seeing this go forward, and actually I don't see what you guys see today. I just saw what was sent to me, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. So I think that's a real preliminary plan. I'm not able to see what you guys are seeing today. So as this proceeds, I would be interested in the exact locations of the main house, and especially the south cottage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the public?
Yeah, I know Mr. George Covington was asking to speak a while ago and is not now. I don't know if that's intentional. There we go. I like to think we make the technology part of this as smooth as we can. George, you're able to speak to us whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I'm not sure. I can't see myself, but I don't really need to see myself. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
Well, I've lived in the property to the north of this property for a long time, for about 40 years, and I've seen a variety of plans, some of which have also been presented by Mr. Patera, and the same enthusiasm he presented this evening's plan. However, I will say, regardless of Mr. Patera's enthusiasm for other plans, this is by far the best plan I've seen, and I am really supportive of it. I have some issues, as Tim Keller does, with the setback. There's also a drainage issue along the north boundary of the about to be Craybill property, which I've discussed with Liam, and have sent him some pictures, and I'm sure we'll deal with that. I would also like to make sure that the wetlands, the 16 or so acres of wetlands, are really preserved in an appropriate way. Frankly, and I'm also a member of Shore Acres, and I've been a member of Shore Acres for about as long as I've lived there. But I've also seen Shore Acres do things that I would not consider the the top of ecological maintenance. And this wooded wetland is, as I understand it, an ecologically significant one. And I think there should be some standards with regard to its future maintenance. It should not be maintained like a golf course adjunct. But in any event, I congratulate Liam on, I think it's a great plan. I'm enthusiastically supportive of it, and I'm sure we can work out whatever details we need to work out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Covington. Any other comments from the presenters before we open it up for questioning by the board members?
I've got nothing.
All right. Who'd like to start?
I'll start. This is George Russell. While George is still on the line, George Covington. George, I'm assuming that you're okay with the driveway easement across your property.
Yeah, well, it doesn't cross the property. As far as you're talking about the driveway.
Yes, the county records show you own that little piece to the north.
Well, I do own. I'm not sure exactly where the driveway is in relation to it. My property has a kind of a flange or a panhandle going to the west. I'm assuming, from what I've seen, that driveway avoids that. I think it would be in the interest of Mr. Keller and me to move the driveway a little bit to the west, because I don't think he really wants to see the driveway go past my old ramshackle garage that's there. That would probably not be a suitable entrance to his property, but those are tweaks I think we can work out. Mr. Craybill, I'm sorry.
Okay, and then quickly for Mr. Keller. Mr. Keller, the drawings that were being shown for the South Cottage, which they're commenting would be in the area of 1,000 square feet or something like that, one story, they're currently depicting it graphically anyway at about 80 feet off the back from the top of Bluff and about 80 feet north of the property. It's in the realm of what you would consider to be reasonable.
So it's 80 feet from the top of the bluff and 80 feet from the lot line?
That's correct. It's just a graphic depiction at this point, but I'm just wondering, since you commented on that.
Yes, to me that seems reasonable.
Okay, thank you. For Jack Keller, I guess, the driving range, I'm going to assume that there's absolutely no intention to have any operations in the evening. I'm also wondering, I'm sure even though every one of your members is a car golfer or better, that golf balls do go astray, and wonder what you have in mind for keeping Mr. Booth's property from filling with golf balls over the years.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer that question. First of all, it's a membership who I don't know how many golfers there are on this committee, but not many of us can even hope to hit it 300 yards to the end of the range like Dustin Johnson would. We may have one or two who can, but I'm sure they're used to having limits on how far they can fall. So I think there's plenty of room before Mr. Booth's house for us, and we also plan to leave as many trees as we can in place while still being able to practice hitting shots. I'm sorry, what was the other question? I feel like I missed one of the questions. What was the other question?
Just the nighttime operations.
Yes, no, absolutely no night play. Currently, we close our range at 7 p.m. I think that would be the same, and obviously at certain times of the year, it's not even open that late because it gets dark. We're not planning to light the range or anything like that. And I would also point out that the range is closed currently from November 1st, I think, to April 1st. So, it's not a heavy part of the year where it's just not used at all. And then even in those times of the year when it is used, it's not going to be heavy traffic, with the exception of when we have an event where it might be a fair amount of use for about 45 minutes, and then there'll be sort of no use for the rest of the day. So, that's kind of how it gets used. But no, we have absolutely no intention to light it or use it at night for hitting balls. I think the only thing that Nick pointed out is we might at some point want to put a small facility to help us have maintenance equipment stored out there. But at this time, that's sort of all we envision that we would have, and that's our vision for the time being.
Okay, and one last question, Mr. Keller. Did I understand you correctly? There's a short access driveway that the booths use to access the north, on the north side of their property. You said there is discussion about leaving a short section of driveway there along the north property line for them to maintain.
It's on the western portion. Arden Shore Road comes and sort of curves around, takes a right turn around the booth residence, and they get to their garage that way. That was, I believe, the original road into where the school buildings were, and it continues down. You can, you've probably been there. You can drive right down there now, right down to where the parking lots were and still are. I think we would remove most of that road, but we would probably leave access so that if we needed to get, I'm making this up because I really don't know, but if we need to get a large truck in to remove a dead tree or something, it might be better to bring it in that way than it would be through the new entrance that we're going to create over to the northeast. And so what specifically would happen to that road, I can't comment right now, but there would be some portion of that road in my view, would remain and possibly be attached to Shore Acres Road. Currently, they're still separate, even though they're only separate by about 2 feet, they are separate.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer that?
Yes, it did. Very well. Next question for our village attorney. Ben, last month or maybe the month before, you admonished all the members of the PCZBA about expressing their opinion, whether they were in favor of the proposal, until after all public hearing comments had been made. So here we are being asked to give the applicants, if you will, an opinion as to whether or not we would favor this. So if you could give us any guidance on that before we comment, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So anything you say tonight, first of all, understand that we don't have the formal application. We don't know what route this may take in terms of avenue of relief that they might be seeking. And it is, so anything you say is of course caveated by, one, you have the right to change your opinion. Number two is there's facts that we don't have, both from the public at a public hearing, as well as from the applicant, because we don't have a full application. So you are free to express with those caveats your general impressions of what's before you. And I think it's, and it's also, I think, appropriate if you think that this is, so to speak, whether it's the ADU issue or something else that would be dead on arrival, and that is certainly something that you can share with the applicant of your impressions. They have, of course, the right to proceed with an application anyway. And it's something that, based on the facts, what you see before you, you have, good impressions of it. It's okay to let the applicant know. The difference, I think, is when we have a public hearing, our general advice is that, you know, you are there to hear everybody, all the evidence that's entered, whether it's an applicant or the public, an objector, somebody who's in favor of it. This is not a public hearing this evening, so it's a slightly different format. So feel free to express your opinions, and as I said, you know, everybody should understand that it's not binding.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Well, just to wrap up my thoughts then, you know, there's always a lot of technical issues on a property this big, but I'm sure that staff, the village engineer and the assistant administrator are going to be able to handle those very well. But I'm absolutely find myself extremely supportive of this particular proposal. I've seen numerous proposals come in over the last 25 years, and almost all of them envisioned very high density cluster up near the lake. This particular proposal with 3 very modest sized homes for this area on 26 acres is to be able to preserve all this open space is fantastic. The golf course driving range would be where all the old 15 or so buildings used to sit on the Ardenthorpe School. I wish we could hear from Larry Booth this evening, but I know in the past, Larry's been involved, Mr. Booth has been involved in projects where a golf course driving range has actually come across the easterly part of his lot. So he was supportive of golf course driving ranges before. So I'd just like to assure the petitioners, the applicants, that I'm very supportive, and I hope this moves through. I find myself thinking that best way to move something like this through is actually a PRD. I for one think trying to get the accessory dwelling unit issue resolved based on some of the comments I've heard from the village board may be very time consuming. And I've read the PRD regulations over several times, and I don't know why this couldn't be structured as a PRD and move this through on its own merit. I think the only detailed comment that I forgot to make is that north wing, Mr. Crabell, of your property there where the driveway comes in, once it crosses the Covington wing, would you be willing to have a final plat that would not allow any accessory structures up in that wing at all alongside the driveway?
I think I'm understanding you correctly. The kind of the piece that kind of sticks out that connects to the road. Yeah, yes. I'd be very comfortable with that.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Who's next? Ms. Ryder?
I guess I'll speak up. I like George and very supportive. I think it's an amazing, thoughtful, and very respectful of the history use of the property. I love the amount of green space, the low density. I think it's far more in keeping with the country estate intent, like the concept, the intent of the country estate by having these small accessory dwelling units versus what could be the alternative of dicing it up. So I think it's very much in the intent of what a country estate property would look like. I agree with George. I think there's, details that we need to get into, but in general, I think the concept is fantastic, and I'm very supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Ms. Ryder?
Yes, I too, much shorter time frame on the PCZBA, but I too am in favor of this particular design. It is low density, and I think it should inform us as we think through the ADU possibilities. I don't know, George may well be right that the PRD would be a simpler way to go forward, but whether we go forward it that way or with the ADU way, I think, the notion that of what these folks want to do with this property ought to inform how we treat folks with less space. If somebody's not seeking to expand beyond the FAR, we don't need to talk in depth about the ADUs, but the need for that kind of space that this family is expressing is the same need that many families on much less space express, and the FAR ought to be the issue rather than who is living where. So that's for another day, for us to talk about another day. I'm very, very much in favor of this design. I am curious about one thing, and since I have years of experience on the line here with me, I'll just ask. I note now that with this subdivision, the driving range will actually be in the village of Lake Bluff, while the rest of the golf course is in unincorporated Lake Bluff, as I read the zoning maps. Am I right about that?
That is correct. Well, not the rest of the course. Other parts of the course are within the village, but yes, there's an unincorporated area
Oh, I see.
immediately off the north line here.
I see.
I think if I can jump in, I think we have a split of both unincorporated Lake County and Village of Lake Bluff. And I can't remember the exact acreage of each.
And that's fine. So this won't be unprecedented. I guess that's something I didn't understand. So it won't be any different than you currently have some of the course in unincorporated and some in Lake Bluff.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I was involved in discussions about the annexation of part of Shore Acres back years ago with Dave Graff and the village manager at the time. There's about, I think it's about the easterly, roughly 63, 65 acres of Shore Acres is not in Lake Bluff. The westerly part, which is larger, is in Lake Bluff. And there are a lot of reasons for that, including the fact that Lake Bluff, the Shore Acres has trap shooting that might not be legal in Lake Bluff. There are other issues that will probably remain. I don't think it matters at all whether the driving range is in Lake Bluff. I think the new driving range would probably be entirely Lake Bluff if it's entirely on the Arden Shore property.
That's what it looks like to me. It was more curiosity than anything. And I hadn't understood until now that portions of the current property or current golf course are actually crossing jurisdictional lines, if you will. So I echo the support for this, and I think we should take the lessons that we're hearing here about the need for multi-generational housing and think about it in the context of other homes, other people with similar parent needs, the way this couple has explained their needs.
Thank you, Ms. Ryder. Ms. Danley.
Oh, I echo from what so many people are saying in that, and especially about the course of least resistance. I feel I have empathy for anyone trying to take this beautiful piece of land and especially have two lot subdivision. We have seen quite a bit of studies and presentations, and to think that one owner that could give back and preserve some of the green space and give back to Shore Acres just seems like a win-win, not only for our community, but for the Kribels as well and for Shore Acres. I just hope, back to the course of least resistance, I am concerned for you just because we're bringing up the ADUs and trying to understand that. what George reiterated, maybe there's another way of approaching this to have it more on a fast track for you, because I certainly would think this would be the best outcome for everybody involved. Definitely would be in favor of this. The only thing I always think about is any time maybe I'm a little tree hugger that we all are living in Lake Bluff, when we talk about the tree inventory and surveys, and we're going to have a history of the trees and replacement policy. I know that's more of a policy aspect of it, but I just want to make sure that whatever we tear down or have to cut down due to the ash or anything else, that we would make sure that they're replaced with a substantial tree. And again, I'm sure that's policy, but I just bring that out there that we don't lose sight of that as well.
Thank you, Ms.
That's
Danley.
it. Lovely.
No, thank you very much. Dr. Miller?
As all the proposals we've seen, this obviously, in my mind, and I think in the members' minds, is the best. The issues, as I see them going forward, are the environment and the wetlands, which we'll have to decide once the appropriate studies are made. The sewer and water issue, which is something that is you're going to need a variation on, so that you don't have you have septic and well water, and the ADU, which may or may not be a problem depending on how you go about doing this, whether it's a PRD or otherwise. The property's big enough. I don't think ADU is going to be a thing that's going to stop you from building. Should you, in my mind, should you decide to go ahead with the project without a PRD? So basically, it's an excellent plan. I wish I was living there myself. So good luck, and we'll talk later when you come across with your proposal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Miller. As reflected by virtually all of the board members, I too am highly impressed by this proposal. Certainly there are not density issues. I think it's very, very important that the neighbors to the north and to the south are favorably disposed. You've worked very well, obviously, with Shore Acres. The draining, ecological, and septic/water issues will have to be addressed at some point. And from my personal perspective, the proposed ADU issue is not problematic to me, especially considering that we're dealing with an estate property. So I think it's a highly impressive and commendable proposal, and appreciate your taking the time to present it to us tonight. Any further comments or questions from we'll say petitioner in quotes, because it's not a formal petition, or from the board members?
No, again, I just want to thank you all for your time and consideration. I had the privilege of watching the previous petition, and looks like North Shore Drive's totally going to the dogs, but that's in a good way. My own veterinarian's over there. But again, we thank you. And if you have no more questions, I don't do. Liam, Jack, Nick, anybody have anything further to add? George, nice to see you.
We look forward to working with staff. They've been really helpful. Glenn, Drew, we've had a couple conversations, and we look forward to continuing that relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you from Shore Acres as well. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Glenn, it's all yours.
All right, we'll take it. You're welcome to hang around and hear us talk about underground garages if you like. It'll be, I don't have a pun at the ready. I should have come prepared. I apologize. It'll be quite the conversation.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 6, public hearing, subterranean garages and spaces. Mr. Cole, if you could give us an overview of the issue.
Certainly. So, give me just one sec here. I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. All right. So this is a continuation of your public hearing from October, which itself, in some ways, is a continuation of your discussion in August regarding the policy, the village's policy on underground garages. Again, as a refresher, currently underground garages are special use in all districts associated with all uses. There was a recommendation to alter some of the conditions applicable to them that went to the village board in August, along with the 541 East Prospect application. That application was ultimately withdrawn, the text amendment denied, and that matter referred back to you to make a recommendation to the village board. We brought you an ordinance in October that talks about some changes, and some of those we understand looking at the tape, and that I think there was consensus for among the group. It sounds like there was not a consensus around really in our typical residential areas, R1 through R6, about if these should be a permitted use, a special use, prohibited use. There were a number of individual issues, stormwater, groundwater, safety, that were brought up, and you'll recall at the end of the hearing, this body continued that hearing, asked us as staff to review some of these issues in detail to bring you more options. So I hope that we've given you answers to all of those questions that were raised in October. Again, we've conferred as staff, including with the village engineer, about what you have here in front of you. I won't go through them individually, but in short, we've given you options to make sure that they don't flood in a projected storm, that they wouldn't be too steep for aesthetic reasons, ice reasons, water reasons, etc. You can make them more restrictive as to floor area. You can make sure future owners are aware of the risks. You could require a safety railing on the approach. I'd say on this particular one, we're not sure if that's really a zoning matter or a building code matter, but one way or another, we can bring that as your recommendation. And then also, from time to time, this body has recommended that some residential design elements be reviewed by the Architectural Board of Review. That could be an option too for aesthetic reasons. So happy to answer any questions about the memorandum or to hear the commission's views.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Cole, and thank you for the team's hard work in putting all these documents together. Any interest from the public with respect to comment before we get started with the commissioners?
Does not appear so, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Who would like to lead off on this particular issue?
I can. I'll start. The ABCs to F are quite extensive and I think quite important to include in anything that we decide on. It was made clear at the last meeting that we should allow for underground garages. Voted in favor of that as I think it was 3-2 or 4-3. That said, do we include all A, B, C through F restrictions in the code? Or do we pick and choose? Is it one for group A or group B? We still have to talk about whether you can put it in the front of your house versus the side of the house. My point being that if we're going to allow this to happen, we shouldn't make it so restrictive that it cannot happen. If we do that, we might as well just restrict the whole thing and say, be done with it. It's much easier. But if we decide people are entitled to it, but let's give them a chance to do it and not have to, come up with, a large amount of money just to put an underground garage. So that's where my thoughts are at the moment. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Biller.
I just wanted to say real quick, I feel the same way. I think if we stop all the restrictions and clearly say where a lot of other communities are having no specific zoning regulations, I'm just curious about going in that direction, because when I read all these A through F and all the different sort of hypothetical footprints and railings and all the other things that could or could not happen. It's not only a bridge too far, but a garage too too difficult to comprehend. So.
Yeah, so I think I agree with that sentiment. I'm of the, I guess, rather than going through A through F, I guess I'll just reiterate what I think my opinion was last time. I'm okay with these. I'm not as concerned as I think some of the members are, and that's fine. We can have different opinions. So I think there are engineering requirements that should be reviewed as part of our building code, not within the Planning Commission zoning board. I think there's only certain things that we can do to protect people. If we're worried about them flooding, then every house in Lake Bluff should probably have a backup battery system and or a generator by code, because there's probably a ton of houses that flood multiple times a year without having those, just due to our power outages that happen regularly. So there's only so much we can do, and I either think that we should just allow these without all of these specifications, or just restrict them. I don't think they're that big of a deal to go through this much of a headache to try to put all these restrictions around them in something that's probably going to happen a couple times. New ones might happen a couple times, just to the economic impact, how expensive they are to put into them, the risk they are related to flooding. This is not like something that's all of a sudden going to take off, in my opinion. So I'm of the intent of saying that these would be allowed uses, similar to other nearby communities. But if we do go down the path of trying to come up with these restrictions in A through F, so I certainly appreciate and respect what you've done, Glenn and staff, to put these together. But I would just say restrict them altogether then. If we have a consensus that we really think we need to be restrictive and these are a bad idea, well, let's just restrict them altogether then, than trying to make this a complex mess. That's my 2 cents. Well, 5 cents probably.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
I think everyone knows, but I would always like to comment, we're just trying to give you the tools to make an informed decision. It does not bother me in the slightest if one or more of these do not come to fruition.
Okay. Ms. Ryder.
Yes. Having looked at the history of this issue a bit more based on the packet that we talked about last meeting, I'm now of the opinion that we at least should have these as a special use or allow them completely. I guess when I look at all of these restrictions, I think to myself, these are restrictions that should be covered by other portions of the code and or by the architectural board. There's a variety of other ways to get to the issues that are identified here. And so what I'd like to propose is, if we need to change something, that we just simply allow them as of right. I want to go back to my suggestion before, that the proposal that we've lived with for the last over a decade seems to have worked the way that we wanted it to work. And so my thinking is we might not change that, what we currently have. But if we are going to make any changes to what we currently have, I would just agree and just permit them as of right, and let the FAR take care of it.
Thank you, Ms. Ryder. Mr. Russell.
Sounds like I'm in the minority here. I remain of the opinion that these aren't a good idea. I'm a little confused by some of the members in terms of allowing them with the restrictions. I would like to know if you mean also get rid of the requirement that the floor area be counted? I just think that would be a huge mistake if we eliminated the floor area the way it's counted now, because I just remember the point in time where so many of these were built, and they're built for one reason and one reason only. It's to get more homes on the lot than would otherwise be permitted.
George, I'm sorry, I just wanted to be clear that yes, I agree that FAR penalty, if you will, restriction as you put it, ought to remain. I did not want to do away with that, in case what I said was not clear enough.
I agree, George. I mean, I intended to keep that. I was thinking it more from a, do we make it prohibited altogether, or, I mean, to me, the floor area is already in place. So I would have kept that too. Sorry.
Right, we're talking about not adding more restrictions to something that has a fair amount of restrictions with the FAR. I'm going to tell you again, I think we should get rid of the front garage prohibit, front of the house prohibition of these subterranean garages. I think that's silly. 80% or 70% of the village has front facing garages. Why would we abandon them, not disallow them for something like this?
Yeah, Elliot, I agree with you 100% on that issue. That's one thing I am in favor of, getting rid of that restriction, because by having that restriction, what you force someone to do is have a garage that driveway exits the street, and it has to curve around the side of the property. And if you've seen the ones that were built side entrances, the tanks that are created, the underground tanks for that are just tremendous. Creates twice as much impervious area, and I'd be totally in favor of getting rid of that restriction that says you can't have them facing the street, with the proviso that we still require that the FAR be calculated the way it is now. I think for the most part, there's probably more language in the paragraph A that staff has put together on the underground garage designs, but for the most part, that's already done. I can tell you, they fail because drains clog. They fail because they flood because drains clog. They fail because pumps fail. So you can have the most perfect design in the world. Stormwater is an imperfect science. I'm very confused about why we would want to get into any type of slope angle limit, especially 15%. I did a calc before the meeting on the road going down to the beach, and that's got a 9.5% slope, in case anybody's wondering. So 15% limit isn't much of a limit, and that still would push the garage space back to 50 feet. Floor area we've already talked about. Trying to make a future owner aware of the risk. I think that's a burden on staff that would be almost impossible to enforce. 20 years down the road, the village isn't, except for if someone calls to cut off their water and they move, the village isn't involved in that process very much for the sale of property. I don't think that's workable. The safety railing provision has me totally at a loss. What's being interpreted, because I think there's already a requirement that if you've got a vertical drop of 30 inches or more, you got to protect it with a rail. So I don't know what we're trying to do except maybe add clarifying language. And the ABR, good heavens, I hope we're not going to start sending single-family homes to the Architectural Board of Review for items like how the garage would appear. So that's my say.
Just to offer as one point of clarification, so today the building code requires that, Bill, can you put the camera on me for a sec, if that's okay? Through the magic of television? Okay. So let's say you have a driveway, you have a retaining wall, and you have your front yard, right? If you have a path running right here that abuts that 30-inch drop or more, you have to have a railing there. But if this is just yard, there's no requirement for a railing. So one of the themes we picked up on is, you know, are you playing in the front yard? Are people working in the front yard, et cetera? That was in some of the discussion this group had at the last meeting. Again, if there's no path, there's no requirement to provide that rail. So you could put in different rules to make sure there was a railing there, even in the absence of that path at the higher elevation.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Glenn, at this time, when somebody wants to do this, do we have a certification that it's okay to do, or that leaves it up to the homeowner?
Can you be a little bit more specific, a certification as far as the
if we go
drainage?
back to A, not to add more complications, when somebody applies for this use of their house, do they have to guarantee, they have to do this, have a civil, they don't have to do this currently, the civil engineer and a guarantee it can resist a 100-year storm currently?
They would not need to have an engineer make that certification. I think that I would be surprised if a professional licensed civil engineer would design one ignoring that standard, but they aren't required to make that certification to stamp it. I couldn't tell you what the liability implications of that are.
So I don't think it's the village's responsibility to prevent them from flooding if they want to go through and do this. I mean, I don't think we have to. They should do their own due diligence. I don't think in this case the village has to, you know, comply with that, because we are having 100-year storms quite frequently now, or more frequently than we did 5 to 10 years ago. So, if I may, I think if we keep requirement C in there, and I think maybe we should require a safety railing, requirement E, and get rid of the front door requirement. I think that's all we need to do with this, in my mind.
Hey, Elliot, just to clarify there, item C, Glenn was giving us a more restrictive than what currently exists FAR calculation.
Let's keep it what we have now, George. Just keep it what we have now.
All right, well, I generally support what you just proposed. Glenn, I do have one question for you. In your proposed draft, and now I can't find it. Darn it. On page 3 of your proposed ordinance, you have the language down at the bottom. Every part of a required yard or other open space required pursuant to the provisions of this title shall be open from its lowest point to the sky and unobstructed. No basement, cellar, or other underground space may be built without a required yard or open space. That was very confusing what you were.
Where is this, George?
Bottom of page 3 in the proposed ordinance, but I guess part of this ordinance was drafted to restrict these completely, so I guess that's going to have to be modified. Never mind.
Yeah, and I would actually say that is, you know, whatever posture this group takes as far as the text amendment, we think this, or as staff, we would recommend this or something similar to it be part of your recommendation. What we're trying to do here is, right now, this says that a yard is open from its lowest point on the ground, is how you would probably read that, all the way up to the sky. Our staff interpretation has been that that includes basements. You know, you can't have a house set at 20 feet back and then have, you know, take your basement all the way to the property line. You have to constrain the basement right there at the setback for the house. And so that's what we're recommending is essentially is codified here. The use of the term.
Glenn,
Oh, go ahead.
And you're suggesting that the term underground space, that would cover the garage approach, the approach drive that go below grade, that is an underground space?
We would not consider that an underground space. No, we would, our thought here is that is just a driveway with a retaining wall. We can look at making that a bit more sharp if there's a thought we need to.
Oh, because right now, the current ordinance, you've got to keep these tall retaining walls that can get up to 8 feet high, 5 feet off the lot line. I would think we would want to keep that. I don't think we want someone building one of these and pushing the retaining wall up against the lot line, the neighbor, especially in our R4 zones where there's only 5-foot side yards to begin with.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, my understanding, and Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, part of this language here is more meant to clarify kind of current practice. So if you look at that provision at the very, very beginning, where it says shall be opened from its lowest point to the sky, it can be a little vague in the sense of what is lowest point? Is that on the ground or is that under the ground? And so part of what is written after and what's been added is to clarify that lowest point also really means under the ground, not just kind of the lowest point, at ground level. So you can't get away with sparing a whole bunch of structure, putting topsoil on top, and then saying it doesn't count. I'm not in the yard.
Right.
I guess as I reflected.
Okay,
Oh, go ahead, George.
No, I just wanted to make sure that it sounds like we're going to move in the direction of allowing these still. We're going to count the FARs as currently counted. We're going to get rid of the requirement for the garage doors can't face the street, but I would also like to make sure that these underground wells, the retaining walls, all retaining walls, can't be in the side yard setback. Just as a basement can't be in a side yard setback.
Yeah, our intent, and I think we're right, that nothing here changes the current treatment of retaining walls for side yard, front yard, side yard, et cetera, those purposes. I haven't looked too closely at that question, but I think, as you implied, they're treated as accessory structures. They're subject to a 5-foot setback.
I guess as I've indicated earlier in our discussions a month or two ago, I take a different position with respect to this whole issue. I'm at a loss as to whether there is any sort of compelling reason as to why we would want to amend our current ordinance. It's been in place for maybe 15 years. There have been few, if any, issues that have come before us. I personally find these subterranean garages to be aesthetically unattractive. I think we've discussed the risks of flooding, health and safety, adverse impact on the neighbors and neighborhood. And so from my perspective, I'm a strong proponent of leaving the ordinance as currently drafted, requiring a special permit for, I believe, essentially all zoning districts.
Was it originally, was before today a special permit? I forget.
My understanding, I think it's special permit for R1 through R6. Is that correct, Mr. Cole?
Sure. So I would offer to you, if I could, I think what was intended and then what was enacted. So I think what was intended was that there was a concern about underground garages in relation to single-family dwellings. And so as part of these floor area changes and other changes made to our provisions governing single-family residences at that time, underground garages were made a special use. What I would suggest to you is that in doing so, in the manner in which that was enacted and recommended, That also had the effect of making it harder to build underground garages in commercial districts and multifamily districts, et cetera, where certainly they are more common, where they're subject to a different building code. And whereas you'll recall, for example, in this group's Block 3 discussions, that there is even an expectation that that would be necessary or beneficial or preferable for some forms of development contemplated in the village's comprehensive plan and in its other planning documents. So I would say, of course, this group should consider the issues and make its recommendation. I would not want to, I would say that adjusting it should, if there's not a desire to recommend that yard basement change, and not a desire to recommend changing this for multifamily industrial commercial projects, certainly okay. I would just hope that that would be an intentional decision, if that makes sense.
Are you saying that some of this will be special use and some of it would not be special use?
So right now it is special use in all districts. It doesn't appear that the discussion at that time was to make it in all districts. It was to make it for single family residences. And so even if you were to keep it as a special use for single family residences, we would say that you would want to consider making it a permitted use in those other districts.
I would agree with that.
I'm fine with that.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm on board with that approach.
Okay.
So are we ready for a proposal or any more discussion or?
Certainly, if there's any further discussion, that would be fine, or if you were in a position to make a motion, Dr. Miller, that's fine also.
Anybody else want to say something, or we get off this subject finally? Okay, so I propose keeping the current ordinance with the following changes. Get rid of the requirement for having a backyard garage, or allow garage doors to be in the front, however you want to phrase it. I would require that a safety railing with any depth of 30 inches or more, whether there's a sidewalk or not, but it has to have a safety railing there. And we make permitted use for the other districts that we just talked about. Somebody needs to put it in correct words, though.
I think that sums it up, Elliot. I think we all understand it. We also do want to include the staff recommended clarification about the side yard setback.
Absolutely.
Issues, though, correct? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion, or does the panel fully understand the pending motion? All right. Might as well call the vote.
I suppose so. Member Ryder.
Aye.
Member Burns.
Aye.
Member Miller.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Danley.
Aye.
And Chair Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank God.
Elliot was going to resign if we took this to another meeting.
Way too much time for such an issue, but let it be said, we didn't come up with all solutions here. All discussion.
And in this instance, we're a recommending body, as the committee is aware. Agenda item
Can we
number.
make an addendum that if the village board doesn't like it, that they don't throw it back to us for revisions?
We won't take it again.
We'll refuse it.
No,
Motion to refuse.
no remand back, huh? Okay. We could try.
No give backs. No give backs.
Hot potato.
Agenda item number 7, staff report.
Certainly, I have a few items for a staff report. We'll keep it relatively brief. Our latest Plan Commission meeting in a while. As this group will recall, there were some historic preservation amendments that this group held a public hearing on some changes for. They were drafted, a part of those changes. They were drafted by our Historic Preservation Commission, recommended to the village board earlier, I believe it was last month. I confess time runs a little bit together at this point. But those, just for the group's information, those have been sent back to the Historic Preservation Commission to receive more public input. At this time, that group is looking at holding a series of public meetings in January and February. There's a month in between there, to again gather more public input and to refine their recommendation to the village board. So when we'll keep you informed about those. Again, there's a piece of that that's within your purview, and then the idea of a preservation ordinance is contemplated by the comprehensive plan, important to our single-family neighborhoods, our residences. I think some of the discussion around 500 Arden Shore shows the value of those exercises in preserving the history of our town. As you'll recall, a few months ago, the village board directed us to engage in a review of planned residential developments. We're still working on the path towards that review, so no updates at this time, but stay tuned. Similarly, on the Stonebridge item, no new developments there. The village remains in litigation. At this time, we don't have anything on our December agenda. Most likely, unless there's an application here in the next few days, there would be no need to call a meeting in December. So you can enjoy your holiday, perhaps. We'll let you know if that situation changes. I hope I will be able to give you a bit of a homework assignment over the winter break, unfortunately. Not too bad of one, but staff and the village attorney, as you know, as you've experienced and you've heard over everyone's time on the PCZBA, our zoning code has been assembled over a great period of time, going back. Our last major rewrite was in the 80s. Many provisions date back even older than that. And so organizationally, you'll know that sometimes that document shows its age. It can be a bit hard to work with, a bit clunky. For about a year or so as a back burner project, we've been working to try and smooth out some of those wrinkles, try to, again, keep the substance the same, but to really make something that's more user-friendly, that's a bit more modern, that hopefully by smoothing this out, we reduce our administrative work as staff, the work for applicants, helps keep everything neat and legal and understandable. So the downside of that is it's a very long ordinance that doesn't change a whole lot, but we'll be probably circulating it to you here before the end of the year to look at in the hopes of starting to talk about it early next year. So happy to answer any questions from the group, or we can begin to call it an evening.
Quick question. What we did today with the dog training business and having them move across the street, so to speak, is there any way we can change the requirements that they have to come before us? If it's the same business in a bigger space, it was truly a big project for them at a significant cost for a business that I'm sure doesn't have a big pot of money to work with. Is there any way we as a zoning board can have the village circumvent that process if the village attorney, if the village manager all agree that this is just a lateral move, rather than bringing it before us again.
Perhaps, which is the worst answer, but except for a lawyer. You can certainly create some creative steps if you want, but there is a risk, which is zoning is tied to the land on which it is on. And what we say in our code for like a special use is that there are certain uses based on the building, based on the property itself, perhaps its proximity to neighbors and the externalities of the use, have these, things that you want to investigate and you want to consider before granting a special use. If we just let them transfer the special use to another parcel by saying, well, if it's a bigger building, for example, we open ourselves up to potentially a claim that it's arbitrary. Because, and as well from a policy perspective, so take, a dog use where you're dealing with things like barking dogs, the building may be bigger, but the setback might be different, or the neighboring properties. So barking dogs may have a bigger impact across the street. And that's just one of many examples. If you think of all the special uses in your code, every type of special use has different issues that present themselves. So if it's something you'd like us to explore, we can certainly look at trying to come up with creative ways to do it, but we have to be very careful because otherwise it just looks like an arbitrary distinction that a moving business doesn't have to get a special use, but a new business moving into the same exact location would have to get a special use.
But if we allowed the village manager the leeway to say, I'll review this, and because we've done this with other issues. If Glenn and Drew say, yeah, this is the same business, why do we need to bring it in front of the commission, the zoning board? Couldn't they have the ultimate say and say, yeah, go ahead and do it, and it's looked at by someone?
If you'd like us to look at an approach, we would need to do some research. I don't know if other communities have tried it. Again, I think I have some general legal concerns, and we'd have to be very careful on how we come up with such a scheme. We can certainly look at it, and if you'd like us to, we can report back some ideas and figure out different avenues that might work, or other ways to relieve some of the burden.
We're just talking about the village code is so top heavy now. In certain ways, can we streamline it? This may be a good way to start.
Mm-hmm.
Same business, different location, village is looking at it, it'll seem okay.
Understood. So let me put a little work into it and let me report back to you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd offer too, on reflecting on Member Murray's departure, one of the highlights of his tenure and this group's work the past couple of years has been some of that streamlining of our use table and the businesses that can locate in our industrial areas. Certainly we're always looking out for ways to advance that goal as we share in trying to accomplish your work of balancing these different interests. So we will take a close look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners report, any questions or comments?
Nope.
Well, I guess before we have a motion to adjourn, I certainly want to wish all of you a healthy and relaxing, atypical Thanksgiving. And also, if we don't meet again in December, certainly a pleasant and healthy holiday season also, because we might not reconvene until the new year. But we've accomplished a lot in 2020, and we'll be ready to roll forward in 2021.
One last question about the ADUs. When are you going to decide on that?
Sure. So in short, you remember where we left off was we had a couple issues to look at. We're hoping to do that in the context of a charrette or some case studies, if you would. with courtesy of some pro bono help from our friends at Edward Deegan Architects. Of course, the downside of free help is that sometimes it has to take a backseat to paid help, I think is a polite way of putting it. So they're very busy preparing for their next spring construction season. We're still working with them on getting those done, or perhaps looking at other options depending on how their capacity looks in the next few months. So has not fallen off the radar.
Great. Any further discussion tonight? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Happy holidays, everybody.
Same, take care.
Stay-
Thank
stay
you.
safe.
Take care of yourselves.
Stay safe.
Bye.